What's going on, guys? It's Zach here. Bring guys to a fantasy football video. This will be going over every single matchup in Week 14, the final week of the regular season for most people in fantasy football, and going over which player in each game, or which players, or every single fantasy relevant player in each game should and shouldn't be in your fantasy football lineups. I'll sort of go over what I'm expecting from each side of the game in general, sort of help you guys get an understanding of what I'm expecting out of each player, so you guys can help get your lineup set. I know this is a really important week for a lot of people. A lot of people are in must-win situations if they want to get into the playoffs. A lot of people are fighting it out for buys. Maybe you're just fighting to avoid last place and avoid whatever punishment your league has. But this is a big week for a lot of people, and it should be a lot of fun. I think we've got a lot of really fun games in the slate. Only two buys this week. We got the Commanders and Cardinals on buy, so everyone should be at largely full strength, and should be a really fun week. So, as always, too, if you guys have any specific start-sit questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love helping you guys get your lineup set. And then also, if you got any last-second start-sit questions, hop into the live stream Sunday morning, 1 hour before the morning games kick off, so 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be happy to help walk you guys through everything and get you guys all set to go. And hopefully, get you guys some wins and get you guys right into those playoffs. So, should be a lot of fun. And yeah, let's just get into the first game here. Starting things off with the Texans at the Jets. This is not a game that I'm expecting a whole lot of scoring in. Weather is supposed to play a huge factor there. It's supposed to be rainy and windy in this game. So I think you can start both defenses. I do prefer Houston's defense. Their pass rush looks really good. Derek Stingley's playing really great in the secondary. And on top of that, obviously they're playing the Jets. So it's a really great matchup for the Texans. I've picked them up and I'm playing them in several leagues. And then the Jets defense is just really good. The Texans obviously just lost Tank Dell. Obviously, the Texans are a much better offense than the Jets, but in this weather environment, short Tank Dell, I think you could see the Texans offense struggle a little bit as well. Despite that, I think CJ Stroud, he's a low end quarterback one. Wouldn't expect any sort of like week winning performances, but I still think he'll do just fine for you. Nico Collins, you've got to start him the way he's been playing. There's no way I'd be benching him, even though I'm a little bit concerned there. I do think you can stream Brevin Jordan. It sounds like Dalton Schultz is going to be inactive again. We saw Brevin Jordan put up like 3 for 64 last week. The Jets, despite not really giving up points to opposing fantasy wide receivers, they do give up points to opposing tight ends. So I think you can start Brevin Jordan as like a very fringe top 12 option. But I would sit the other wide receivers. I'm not going to mess around with Noah Brown or Robert Woods this week. I think that Noah Brown does have a shot to be fantasy relevant down the stretch here, but I want to just keep him on my bench and see what happens here. I just don't want to put him in this game. I think I'd sit Brees or Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary as well. Devin Singletary played more snaps than Dameon Pierce last week, but Dameon Pierce ended up with more touches. The Jets can get beat on the ground a little bit, but like I said, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I bet one of Dameon Pierce or Devin Singletary breaks 10 fantasy points. I don't know that I can confidently tell you which one it would be. I think if I had to pick one of them, I would prefer to play Dameon Pierce, but I think in general I'd prefer to sit both of them. Brees Hall for the Jets, I think he's a low-end running back too. Obviously, he's been banged up so far this week, dealing with an ankle injury. He was obviously dealing with a hamstring injury last week as well. There is a chance that he potentially misses this game, so do keep an eye out for that. If he plays, though, I think he's a low-end running back too. He's going to see a lot of volume. He's obviously a threat to House any sort of carry he gets, but it just hasn't been great for him at all. There is a chance, like I said, if he does miss this game, we could see a lot of Dalvin Cook, sort of like what we saw with Ezekiel Elliott on Thursday. So I think Dalvin Cook would be slotted right in as a low-end running back too if Brees Hall misses. But in the event that Brees Hall is active, I would just expect nothing special, but you're probably playing him as a low-end running back too. And then outside of that for the Jets, it's just Garrett Wilson for me. He'd be a low-end wide receiver 3. This Texans defense, you can throw on them in general. On top of that, Zach Wilson coming back and being quarterback for the Jets should raise the floor just a little bit. So I think you can play Garrett Wilson, but just not super excited about it. Next, we got the Rams at the Ravens. This is another game with legitimate weather concerns. Puka and Cooper Kupp are both going to be low-end wide receiver 3s for me. We know this Ravens defense is super legit. They're one of the best defenses in the NFL. Cooper Kupp hasn't looked healthy at all for like the last month or so. Puka Nacua got banged up last week despite putting up a massive performance. They're both banged up, playing in a bad weather game. Just for some context, I benched Cooper Kupp for Ezekiel Elliott in the league this week. It looks like that worked out right now, but just like, going into it, it wasn't as obvious of a play. So that's sort of the tier that I was thinking they were in. So you can play them, but I just wouldn't expect any sort of ceiling, and I would prefer Puka to Cooper Kupp this week. Kyren Williams is a low-end running back 1. He's seeing just so much volume that I think you can play him pretty much every single week, but I wouldn't expect like the 150 yards and 2 touchdowns out of him that you've been getting a little bit. I think I'd expect closer to like 80 total yards and maybe a score. So a bit of a lower floor, a lower ceiling, and a lower floor for Kyren, but you can still play him. Matthew Stafford, I'd be benching him. Just bad weather, bad matchup, not going to go there. Lamar Jackson, he's been battling an illness this week, but I'd still be playing him. It'd just be tough to get him out of my lineup, but I think I would limit expectations just a little bit for him. Zay Flowers, he's a wide receiver 3 for me. with this weather, like I said, there's going to be like 15 plus mile per hour winds, a lot of rain potentially. It doesn't really affect Zay Flowers as much for me because so many of his targets come close to the line of scrimmage. I think he, along with Isaiah Likely, should see relatively similar target shares and production to what they see in normal weather games. So I think they're both options. Zay Flowers being like a wide receiver 3 play for me, and Likely being like a solid, just fringe top 10 kind of guy for me. And then for the Ravens backfield, it'd be Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell. They're both desperation running back plays for me. They're not someone that I'd be super excited about. Keaton Mitchell, you're hoping for a big play. Gus Edwards, you're hoping for a touchdown, but I would be relatively hesitant to play either one of them. Next up, we got the Panthers at the Saints. For the Panthers, I think Chuba Hubbard's the only Panther that I would even consider playing. It's a bad matchup for the wide receivers, so even though we're seeing Jonathan Mingo get a lot more work, we've seen Adam Thielen perform at a high level. It's just not something that I want to touch this week. Not expecting anything super relevant for either one of them, and I think that it's just something that I want to keep an eye on. I think I do prefer Mingo to Thielen, honestly, the rest of the season, which is shocking to say, but just not super excited there. I'd prefer to just look at Chuba and nobody else. Chuba did get a ton of work last week, scored 2 touchdowns. He looks relatively good, so I think I'd be playing Chuba and no one else there. For the Saints, Alvin Kamara, he's a smash start. It's a really great matchup. There's a lot of injuries across the board for the Saints, and Kamara is currently healthy, so I just think you got to be playing Alvin Kamara. He's going to be someone that's honestly got a shot to put up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns this week. He's got a legitimate shot to be the running back 1. Chris Olave, he's a wide receiver 2 this week. The Panthers, like I said earlier, are just a really easy matchup for the running game. I'd expect the Saints to win this game relatively handily, probably not need to throw the ball too much, and you'll probably see Chris Olave see 6 to 8 targets, hopefully catch a couple deep ones, and can still put up a big game, but I think just expect a little bit less passing volume in this one, so I'd just lower the ceiling a little bit for Chris Olave. On top of that, he's dealing with an illness. He missed practice on Thursday, so keep an eye on that. I don't expect it to limit him or anything this week, but just something to keep an eye on. There's a lot of illnesses going around. And then for the Saints, I think that's about it. Taysom Hill's been banged up. Rashid Shaheed's probably going to be inactive, so I think I'd just be benching everyone else for the Saints. Next up, we got the Colts at the Bengals, and I'm honestly super excited to see this game. The way Jake Browning played and the entire Bengals offense looked on Monday gives me a little bit more of excitement for this game. I think that in general, the Colts games end up being really high-scoring games, really fast-paced games. I think we do have a chance to see that this week. Zach Moss, he's a fringe top 15 play for me at the running back position, obviously. Sort of let people down last week, but the volume's there. We've seen him perform at a high level so far this season, and you can run in the Bengals. So Zach Moss, I think I've started him pretty much regardless. Michael Pittman, he's a must start. He's going to see 10 plus targets, likely catch 8 passes, 80 yards, got a shot to score. So you're playing him. Josh Downs is a solid flex play. The targets have been there. He hasn't been super efficient with those opportunities in the last couple of weeks, but he's a good player. I think you can still play him. And then Gardner Minshew, I think you can stream him. There's an opportunity here for the Colts to put up a lot of points on the Bengals. We saw him put up a big game last week, so you can play Minshew, but he's obviously like a fringe top 15 play. So I would hope you have a better option, but you could do worse for sure. For the Bengals, Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, their lineup locks. Mixon's going to see a ton of volume. We did see a little bit more Chase Brown last week for the first time this season, so it's a little bit concerning for me, despite the fact that the Bengals obviously looked really good. You could see a little bit more of a timeshare than what we've seen so far this season, and if the Bengals offense does go back to struggling, there's a little bit of risk there, but I'm still playing Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. Just a threat to put up a huge game in a given week, so you can't really bench him. Then T. Higgins, I think he's a flex option as well. I think I do prefer T. Higgins to Josh Downs this week if that helps make any of those decisions. Obviously, a lot more boom bust. We could have easily had a touchdown last week. Jake Browning just missed him on it. Higgins is obviously a really good player. He's always been relatively volatile, and I think you're just going to see a slightly lower ceiling and a lower floor than what you have with Burrow, but relatively similar game environment and expectations for him. So you can play Higgins, just understand that the floor is effectively 0. Next, we got the Buccaneers at the Falcons. For the Buccaneers, Mike Evans and Rachaad White, they're going to be must starts. Mike Evans is like the wide receiver 7 so far in the season. Rachaad White's the running back 6 in the season. Both these guys have been rock stars. They're playing at a really high level. They're super involved in the offense. There's no way I'm benching either one of them. Baker Mayfield, I do think you can stream him. The Falcons are a defense that do allow teams to throw on them pretty effectively, so I think Baker's like similar to a Gardner Minshew tier kind of guy you can stream, but not someone I'd be excited about. I'd probably sit Chris Godwin and Cade Otton. I know you can throw in the Falcons, but Chris Godwin really hasn't done much this year. He has yet to catch a touchdown in the season. He had that one rushing touchdown last week. Cade Otton runs a lot of routes, but doesn't do a whole lot outside of that, so I think I'd sit both of them. Bijan Robinson, he's a must-start. Obviously, it's a tough matchup for opposing running backs against the Buccaneers, but Bijan catches a ton of passes. He's involved. There's no way I'm benching him. And I think Drake London's a solid play as well. You can throw against the Buccaneers. Drake London has been involved. He's obviously the number 1 target in this offense, and he's a good enough player that I think he's got a shot at, 50 to 80 yards and a touchdown this week. Probably catches 5 to 6 passes. So I think Drake London's a solid wide receiver 3, but I think I'd be playing him if I have him. And then Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, I think I'd just be benching them both going forward. They're not reliable on a weekly basis. Too volatile. We don't know which one's going to put up a big game if any one of them do, so I just prefer to sit both of them if I can. Next, we got the Jaguars at the Browns, and honestly, this might be the lowest scoring game of the week. This is another game that's expected to have a lot of rain, a lot of very high winds, and both defenses are really talented, especially good against the run. Travis Etienne and Evan Ingram. I think they're the only two lineup locks for me from Jacksonville. Etienne obviously just seeing a ton of volume. Ingram coming off of an elite performance last week. And on top of that, with the backup quarterback likely in play for CJ Beathard, I would just expect a lot more targets close to the line of scrimmage. That's going to cater itself more towards a guy like Evan Ingram along with Etienne. So I think those two are definitely guys I'd be playing regardless. Calvin Ridley is a flex play for me. Like I said, CJ Beathard doesn't get me excited. On top of that, the weather and a really tough matchup against Cleveland. I'm just not excited about it, but you can play him. So again, understand that the floor is 0 points. And then Zay Jones, I'd probably keep him on my bench as well. I don't even think my opinion really changes if Trevor Lawrence is actually active. I expect Trevor Lawrence to be relatively immobile, obviously with that high ankle sprain, probably not going to be able to throw the ball downfield as effectively. And on top of that, the weather's just going to be really brutal. So I personally am still expecting that Trevor Lawrence will miss this game, maybe come back the following week, but either way, I'm benching those guys for Jacksonville. For the Browns, Jerome Ford, he's a low-end running back too, just very consistently finishing around that running back 20 mark every single week. Not going to win in your week, probably not going to lose you it, so you can play him for sure. David Njoku, he's a fringe top 10 tight end. He's going to see a ton of volume, even though this is an offense that's not going to put up a ton of points, especially in this weather. Most of his targets come close to the line of scrimmage. I don't expect the weather to really impact his availability very much, so you can play Njoku for sure. Elijah Moore, he's a flex option for me. He saw 12 targets last week, and it sounds like Amari Cooper is not going to be active this week with his concussion. So I'd expect Elijah Moore to see a healthy dose of targets again. We know they can manufacture touches for him near the line of scrimmage as well, so you can play him, especially in PPR formats, but I wouldn't expect a ceiling game out of him at all. Next, we got the Lions at the Bears. For the Lions, both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to be fringe top 15 plays. The Bears' run defense has improved lately over the last 5 or 6 weeks or so, but we did see, especially David Montgomery, put up a big game against the Bears just 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 3 weeks ago. Monty, again, it's a revenge game for him going back to Chicago, so I expect Montgomery to have a better game than Gibbs if I had to pick between the two. Amon-Ra, he's obviously lineup lock, as is Sam Laporta, but I think I'd prefer to sit Jared Goff. It's a road game for Jared Goff. His home versus away splits are very marketable, or very notable. It's very clear that Jared Goff performs much better at home, and on top of that, Jared Goff has a pretty long history of not performing very well in bad weather. This is expected to be a really cold, wet, windy game in Chicago. I wouldn't expect a whole lot of success for Jared Goff, especially given that Jared Goff's been struggling lately, so I'd prefer to not be streaming Jared Goff if I can avoid it. For the Bears, Justin Fields, he's a top 10 streaming option, or top 10 quarterback option. Obviously, just has a really safe rushing floor, but we did see really bad performances out of him just last week against Minnesota, so there is a chance here that he ends up putting up a dud. That's always a risk with Fields, but the ceiling's immense, so I think you can play him for sure. DJ Moore, he's a wide receiver too for me this week. Obviously, he has a shot at the big play. They can manufacture touches for him close to the line of scrimmage. He's the clear wide receiver one in this offense. You're playing DJ Moore. Cole Kmet, he's a good play this week as well. Last time they played in Chicago, he had 7 for 73 and 2 touchdowns against the Lions. So put up a really good week last time they met here. The Lions are not a good defense against opposing tight ends, so I think Cole Kmet's a solid tight end play. And I'd prefer to sit all of the running backs in Chicago. Roshan Johnson looked like he was sort of taking over the lead back role last week, but it was just kind of tough to tell. Khalil Herbert still got worked in. On top of that, Deonta Foreman was inactive, so Deonta Foreman could come back and be healthy for this one. It just makes it too murky. Lions' run defense is relatively good. I would just avoid the entire situation there. Next, we got the Seahawks at the 49ers. This is probably looking like another beatdown here. Geno popped up on the injury report with a groin injury during the week. There's a legitimate chance that we see Drew Lock, so there's no way I'm playing Geno Smith regardless here. That being said, DK Metcalf, he's a low-end wide receiver too. I would sit every other Seahawk in this game, including the running backs. Obviously, everyone's going to get a significant downgrade if we end up looking at Drew Lock instead of Geno Smith. But even with the running backs, even if Walker is active, I'd expect this to be a timeshare. I doubt they just thrust him right back into a full-time role, especially because it seems like Zach Charbonnet would be the one who's more likely to play than Kenneth Walker. So I'd expect that if Walker's active, they're both active. You're probably looking at a situation where they each get 10 to 15 touches. That's not going to be very good against this good of a Niners defense. If Kenneth Walker's inactive, Charbonnet would be a very low-end running back too for me, but it's just not something that I'm excited about. I'd hope to be avoiding them if I can. On top of that, if both of them are out, I know people are going to mention playing DJ Dallas. We've seen the Seahawks in situations like this before where it's been just DJ Dallas. He just can't get it done. Don't do that to yourself, especially not against this defense. So I think in general I'd be preferring to look elsewhere than the Seattle backfield this week. Then for the 49ers, it's really easy. You're starting everyone. Purdy, CMC, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle. They're lineup locks. There's no way I'm considering benching any of those guys. They've got to be in your lineup. Next, we got the Vikings at the Raiders. For the Vikings, it's pretty easy, I think. I think Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, they absolutely need to be in your lineups. There's no way I'm benching either one of those guys. Jordan Addison, he'd be a lower tier flex play. You can still play him, but I think he takes the biggest hit with Justin Jefferson coming back. Hawkinson's obviously going to get his targets from Dobbs. Jefferson, we know he's going to command his. So there's obviously a really low floor here for Jordan Addison. Alexander Madison, he's a low end running back too for me. Just hasn't really been able to get it done lately. We're obviously still going to see some Ty Chandler, but it is a good matchup against the Raiders. You can play him, but you're really banking on a 1 yard score here. I think you need to bench Josh Dobbs. They talked about making a quarterback change over the bye week. They ultimately chose not to, but there's certainly a chance here where Josh Dobbs just comes out and throws a pick early in the game, and then they bench him. So I'd prefer to not be playing Dobbs if I can. Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams for the Raiders, their lineup locks. And then outside of that, I think Jacoby Myers is the only other player even in consideration. You can flex him, but it's obviously super risky. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is going to do a ton this week. It is a plus matchup against the Vikings, but it's just a little bit scary. I think I'd prefer to bench Jacoby Myers if I can. Next, got the Broncos, the Chargers. I'm expecting a big game from the Broncos here. I think they're going to bounce back from their tough loss in Houston. I think I'm really just expecting a big game from Sutton and Russ as well. Russ is going to be a top 10 quarterback play for me. I expect 250 and 2 with like 40 yards on the ground. Cortland Sutton, he's a wide receiver 2 for me. He scored a touchdown in 6 of the last 7 weeks. He's probably going to score again. He's just playing really well. I would be shocked if you have better options than him. Jerry Jeudy, he's even a flex consideration this week. This is a really bad Chargers defense. There's a squeaky wheel narrative as well. He's expressed some frustrations about getting open. There's a lot of coaching staff remarks as well about him getting open and not getting the ball. I think they're going to make an effort to get Jeudy involved this week, so I think you can flex Jeudy if you really need to. Javonte, he's a top 20 play. This Chargers run defense is really bad as well. You can certainly play him, and Samaje Perine dealing with a knee injury. Could potentially miss this game. Justin Herbert, he's a fringe top 10 guy for me. I think I would actually prefer Russ over him this week, which is just tough to say, but it's just tough for this Chargers offense right now. Eckler, he's a running back 2 for me, but it just really looks rough. They talked about potentially getting more touches for Joshua Kelly this week. Austin Eckler looks like he's clearly playing hurt. Maybe he just fell off a cliff here, but certainly concerning. I think I'd be really worried if I have Austin Eckler on my team. Keenan Allen, he's a lineup lock, just too involved in the offense. There's no way you're benching him. Gerald Everett, he's a decent streaming option. The Broncos defense is really bad against opposing tight ends. I think Gerald Everett's got a shot to score this week. Honestly, he's probably the number 2 target in the passing game for the Chargers at this point. Then I'd say all the other Chargers. Joshua Palmer may be active for this one, but I want to wait and see him perform before I trust him. Quentin Johnston clearly can't get it done. Jalen Guyton's not it either. So it's just basically Eckler, Keenan, Herbert, Gerald Everett's an option, and I'm getting out of there for the Chargers. Next, we got the Bills at the Chiefs. This one should be a super fun game, and I think there's actually a lot on the line here. The Bills pretty clearly need to win out at this point. They're 6-6. They got a really tough schedule going forward, but I think we're going to see a really high-scoring game. It should be really fun. Josh Allen, James Cook, and Diggs, they're going to be bust starts for me. James Cook's been a lot more involved out of the backfield as a pass catcher lately. They're using him quite a bit more, and I think that they're going to continue doing that. So I think all 3 of those guys are must-plays. Dalton Kincaid, he's a top 10 option for sure. I would be shocked if you have a better option than Kincaid for your lineup this week. Gabe Davis for the Bills, obviously always a risky dart throw kind of option, but I really do want him in lineups this week. I expect a lot of points to be scored. I think they're going to need him. I expect him to come through with a big game. So in all the leagues I have Gabe Davis, I am making an effort to start him. Mahomes for the Chiefs, he's obviously going to be in your lineups. Isaiah Pacheco just got declared inactive today, so I think CEH is going to see around 15 opportunities. I think you can play him as like a low-end running back too. Obviously got a shot to score, but not someone I'd be super excited about. You're probably looking at about 10 half PPR fantasy points. Jerick McKinnon, he's probably also going to see around 10 opportunities as well. Will be more involved as a pass catcher. Honestly, might have a better shot to score because of how much they use him near the goal line in their pass packages. So I think really, if anything, it's just a big bump for Mahomes because they'll probably run the ball a lot less, especially when they get down near the goal line. But I think McKinnon and CEH are both like low-end running back options if you need them. Travis Kelce, he's a lock every week. Obviously, it's been a little bit disappointing for him lately. There's no way you're benching him. Then Rashee Rice, he's a wide receiver 3 for me. I think you can play him, but I wouldn't expect a huge game out of him this week. Next up, we have the Eagles at the Cowboys, and this could be honestly one of the most fun games of the week as well. We've lucky enough to get it on Sunday night, so it should be a really fun game. Obviously, for the Eagles, you're expecting a lot of points on the other side of the ball. Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and Dallas Goedert. I think they should all be in lineups. Even Dallas Goedert coming off the injury. If they still think he's a top 10 play, I can't imagine you have a better option. DeAndre Swift, he's a solid running back 2 for me. Obviously a bit of a tougher matchup against the Cowboys, but he's obviously a talented player. A little bit banged up, but I still think I'm playing DeAndre Swift this week. For the Cowboys, Dak and CeeDee, they're must starts. They've honestly got a shot to finish as the quarterback 1 and wide receiver 1 in the week. Brandon Cooks, he's a great wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 play. He's been a top 20 wide receiver over the last 5 weeks. I can't imagine benching Brandon Cooks at this point. And then Tony Pollard, he's a top 15 play, but it is a really tough matchup for opposing running backs. You are hoping that he catches a lot of passes. You're hoping he falls in the end zone at some point, and with this high of an over and under, he certainly could do that. So you're playing Pollard, but I would just expect a bit of a lower ceiling out of him this week. And then Jake Ferguson, he's a great start as well. The Eagles are a really great matchup for opposing tight ends. He's been super involved in the offense, basically the number 3 pass catcher there. I think Jake Ferguson's a top 10 option as well this week. Next, we've got the first of 2 Monday Night Football games this week. They both start at the same time, so just keep that in mind. We've got Packers at the Giants. For the Packers, Jordan Love is a solid streaming option. He's looked really good lately, and even without Christian Watson, I still think he'll be able to get it done. A.J. Dillon, he's a low-end running back too. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to suit up for this one, so it's a good matchup for him against the Giants. A.J. Dillon's been relatively good lately, averaging 18 touches per game over the last 3 weeks. Should see plenty of volume. I still think you're playing A.J. Dillon. Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, they're both going to be wide receiver 3s or flex plays for me this week. They should see increased usage with Christian Watson out, so I think you can play them. I do personally prefer Jaden Reed to Romeo Doubs. For the Giants, I think Saquon's the only Giant you should be considering playing. Obviously, it's just not a super high ceiling for him, but it is a good matchup against the Packers. They're not great against the run. He should have some success. He'll obviously be the focal point of the offense. So you're playing him. I just wouldn't expect a super high ceiling there. And then keep an eye on Jalen Highlight for the Giants. I don't think I want to play him, but there's obviously a real opportunity here for him to potentially get that post-bye rookie bump. We could see him come out of the bye, be more involved in the offense. We saw his best game of his career so far happen just 2 weeks ago, so they should get him more involved. I just would keep him on my roster and see what happens there. And finally, we've got the Titans at the Dolphins. For the Titans, Derrick Henry, he's a low-end running back 2 for me. Obviously, we know that Derrick Henry can take over a game and get those 30 touches, and with 2 touchdowns, and have a really monster game. But the concern for me here is that he's averaging just 3.5 PPR fantasy points per game and 2 score losses. I won't be shocked at all if the Dolphins win this game by 2 scores or more even. So I'm scared here. I think there's a really low floor for Derrick Henry, so I'd be a little bit concerned. I could understand if you have better options, but I'd be shocked if you do, but I get it if you do. I think it makes sense to at least look and see what your alternatives are to Derrick Henry, because this could be a dud of a game for him. DeAndre Hopkins to the Titans, he's a risky play at the wide receiver position. Going to get 7 to 8 targets. They won't be good targets. He'll probably catch 4 or 5 passes for 50 to 60 yards. I think he's like a low-end wide receiver 3. You can play him, but I'm not excited about doing it. For the Dolphins, Tua, Achane, Waddle, and Tyreek, they're all must-starts. There's no way I'm sitting any of those guys. And then Raheem Mostert, he's a running back 2 for me this week. I do prefer Devon Achane. When the Dolphins get up a lot, they want to rest Mostert, just given that he's an older veteran. They know his body breaks down over the course of a long season very often, so they want to save him for the playoffs. So Achane's going to get more work in this game. He's probably a little bit more explosive as well. So I prefer Achane. I think Mostert could be on like a bit of a snap count going forward, but you can still obviously play him as well as Achane this week. So that'll do it for the start of this video. Up next Sunday morning, I'll be doing my live stream 1 hour before the games kick off. I'll be going over the last minute injury updates, helping you guys answer any of your live questions in terms of start sits. And if you have any other start sit questions, you can't make it to the live stream or whatever, just let me know in the comments. Be happy to get back to you, help get you guys get your lineup set, get you guys some wins this week. So it should be a lot of fun. Obviously, a really big week here, so hopefully we can get you guys some wins, and hopefully we can get you guys ready to roll. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any other videos, we keep doing these all week, all year as well. Just subscribe to the channel. We need like 30 more subscribers to hit that goal of 1,000. So really appreciate it. If you haven't already, just give me that subscription. It's been a lot of fun, really cool seeing the channel grow. I really do appreciate all of you guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you hopefully on Sunday morning. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.